people have to buy their sports cars or, whatever their, chalets or whatever the hell you want to spend your money on.
Looks like Dan's rocking a Peloton back there. Or
oh yeah,
dude,
it's probably is that where the money went? The Peloton?
Yeah, and then actually I have a dinosaur in a crate.
Wait, is it that like a real, like a bones, or like what are we talking about?
Oh yeah, it's a fossil. It's like a fish.
We were debating before the show. We were like, Dan's a real OG. Like, does he have a tungsten cube? Does he have a Lambo? But you have a fucking dinosaur fossil. That's pretty dope.
All right, sweet. Welcome back, everyone, to the first 1000X podcast of the new year. We have a great guest, Dan Matuszewski, one of the longest tenured crypto traders around, someone who's managed to weather the highs and the lows and stick around despite all of the ridiculous fatigue and silly things that happen in this space. We're recording right after the SEC, about a day after the SEC's Twitter got hacked, and we had some crazy moves in the market. Dan, is that like top 5 stupidest thing you've seen in crypto? Top 10, top 20? Like,
I think it's top 5. I mean, it's top 5 because I mean, we're finally on the big stage, right? Like, dude, every news or well, at least every financial news organization on the planet, like the headlines were just about it, right? Like, I don't know, you got senators tweeting at them, and like, I don't think that any of that stuff will matter, but we just, as an industry, look like clowns for basically for. I mean, the SEC looks bad too, but like also, like, of course, we would not be able to like go through this like adults.
As an industry, like, I would argue we've looked like clowns for some time now, with, FTX turning into, just like the greatest scam since Bernie Madoff and all the other horrible things that have happened. How have you managed to weather these crazy cycles and keep your head screwed on right? I think all the traders out there want to learn how you don't, burn out basically amidst all this craziness.
Yeah. So the FTX one in particular, that one I think was just, we had learned a lot of lessons a lot of years ago. So nowadays people don't think about exchange exposure as much as on the back of FTX they do, but really you got into a lull probably, I don't know, starting like 2020 on where like people kind of stopped worrying about the venue risk. There was that little brief period where OKX like froze withdrawals and people like got a little spooked again, but that didn't really affect US people as much. So anyway, like there hadn't been like a big exchange failure in a while, and people got complacent. But really, like back in the day when we first started doing this, like when I first started trading this thing, exchanges like would go down every 6 months. Like they weren't really sticking around. So you definitely didn't keep more on there than you like had to. So one of the things that we just like as a best practices thing like over the years is we try to diversify exchange venues as much as possible, like that you can, and like really just like keep an amount of money there that you like won't get obliterated if you lose. So like we had money on FTX, we got popped. Like we more likely than not, like any major venue would ever go down, like we would have some exposure to it, but it was all like an amount of money we were able to lose and like continue to like operate, right? And like it actually ended up, I mean, in dollar terms, it ended up being fine. Like whatever, like the risk sort of angle that people are complaining about now, like, I mean, everything went up and like you sort of got blown out at the lows. But anyway, like the long story short is like we picked up habits just sort of from like doing this for so long that like we're able to sort of keep going. Even when like stuff gets like pretty dark and sort of you have exposure to it. So the counter to that is if you diversify your exchanges a lot, you always take a hit sort of when one goes down, right? Like, so you do sort of have this like tail risk of you're always getting clipped a little bit sort of whenever these things blow up. Like we use some like mid-tier exchanges sometimes, and like they go down more. Like we've lost a couple of those probably since we started CMS. And like they were just like a figure that we like were always willing to sort of lose. Like it sucks, like I didn't want it to happen, but like it is what it is. There's like a cost of doing business with the counterparty exposure in this. I think that like makes the returns on the liquid side sometimes like look rosier than they are because like people don't price that risk sort of in it. And I think like a lot of people learn that who are LPs and funds that were liquid, like sort of this last cycle when like funds just got toasted because like their exposures were so high on some of the venues and whatnot. So anyway, like that in particular is sort of help. It's one of these things where like you just do this long enough, like you start running up against like all these scenarios and like hopefully you survive them and then you sort of keep going through it all. So I think I had the fortune of starting when the money didn't matter as much and the numbers were small. So like there was nothing like really like you couldn't really hurt yourself enough to like be out of the game. And like,
When did you start?
I started like trading this thing professionally like 2013. I was like messing around with it in late 2012, and then that first run in, I don't know if it was like Q1 or into Q2, where it ran up to like 1,000 in 2013. I was like, all right, I'm gonna give this a go. And I went to work at Kraken actually, even way back then. They'd like just gone like live on the whole thing. Jesse started that in 2011, but it took him a bit to like get it going. And that was like my first foray, sort of taking a job in crypto.
Did you have a finance background before that, or?
Yeah, I was actually working at a hedge fund. I was trading. I was doing more of the programming side of some of the automated trading to hedge the deltas for like an option book that I was attached to. Anyway, it was mostly a vol fund that was a little like south of Boston. But I mean, I was pretty junior there, so I didn't have like a ton of responsibility on it. But I had learned enough from like the guys being there. I was there for probably 3 years, so I knew enough about like markets to like understand that aspect of it. And I had a technical background, which helped a little bit, but not a ton.
Back then, there was basically, you were going into a market that had negative infrastructure. There was nothing, right? In terms of actually accessing the market.
It like would just not be there in 3 months, or like it would just. I mean, like the methods for like transferring money were weird, slightly gray area if they were even like allowed to be operating. There was like all these like odd payment processors that would like take the action, like Skrill and like Local Till, and like I don't know. Like it was a weird market. It was, and like it was a little more nefarious probably at that time. I mean, Silk Road was big, and it was like definitely huge as a function of like the aggregate sort of volume going on and stuff. So it was a little seedier than it obviously is now. And like as the industry's gotten bigger, like that's like sort of changed. But yeah, it was, and the characters were way more colorful back then, because like people were like, if you were really into it, you were definitely a little more like further on like the belief spectrum in like a lot of different ways. So those people have like kind of gotten like washed in sort of like the whole crowd as like time's gone on.
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely professionalized the industry a lot over the last 6, 7 years, but it's still, I think Sisyphus had a hilarious tweet. It's like, this is still not a serious industry in many meaningful. It's just like the people, the characters, what we do. I mean, you look at half the things that people get up to in this market. It's what shitcoin is going to pump. I'm going to buy it before everybody else and then sell it back to them. And this thing's probably not going to exist in 2 years anyway.
Yeah, I mean, but part of that is like value, right? Like I think like people knock it, but I think a lot of the like, look, this industry is like does have some entertainment value, and I think it has like a way of sucking you in and you don't leave, because it is like a little addicting, just like the information flow, like the communicate, like it is fun, and I think that like that matters a lot. Is like that's like some of the value it like has, is that like it maintains and keeps like a pretty wide, large group of people like involved in it at all times.
Oh yeah, crypto's like the best video game that's ever existed in the history of video games. I mean, it's amazing, and now you have all these tools to play the video game. I mean, you spend all your time in deck screener poking around, or you're looking at order books, you're looking at flows, and it's just, yeah, there's a huge addictive quality to it, and at the same time, we're in an industry that we think is going to change the world over the next 10 to 15 years, which is super nice. But yeah, I mean, being on CT is just like watching a movie day in and day out, right? It's just
a
it's amazing.
really neurotic movie.
And it's bottom, like you can start poking on different, like you can like go look at like one like aspect of it and just be down the hole for days, and then just like pop to another. Like you can never consume the entire like universe of information at this point.
That was actually the thing that was kind of a hard transition for me. I mean, I felt back in 2017, 2018, I could cover basically the whole industry myself. I mean, there were a ton of things that were going on, but you could sort of get a handle on most things. And now when I'm on CT or I'm looking at new stuff, or my analysts are bringing me things, like, I've never seen this before in my life. I have no idea what this is. I don't even understand it at all. And then you have to really spend time to get in. I mean, the industry has definitely grown in terms of width, like the ability for one person to manage and trade effectively. I mean, you kind of need a team now in many ways if you want to cover the whole breadth of it.
Yeah, you can't possibly like absorb all that's going on. Like it's just, there's too many aspects. Like maybe in like the depths of the bear market when it's like slow, like you can like grasp it, but like definitely not now when stuff's flying around.
How active are you, Dan? Do you have a whole team? Or are you just constantly actively trading every single crypto sector? Or are you you running it lean and more trying to, time things and get in and out more slowly?
I think we're probably skewed towards the more active side of the house, like well, like me personally, but then also like our firm, like compared to others. How many are we now total? I think we're 11 total, spread between like a couple of different cities, mostly New York and Boston, and then a bunch of guys remote. We definitely do like a fair bit of stuff like in the DeFi angle of things too. Whatever you like want to call it. Like we're always like banging around on sort of like new stuff and trying to get yield for assets we have. But we're pretty active on the liquid side. We're less active than when we started, but we still like we trade every day for sure. And we pump out a lot of liquidity into some of these like newer, like specifically like the DeFi DEX like derivative protocols. Like we try to like do a lot there where we can, and like we run a fair bit of automated trading. We keep a lot of in-house like programming and like tech talent. And like we have guys who just like do dedicated DevOps, like running nodes and like keeping on all that stuff. So like I don't know, like we're pretty active on that front. And then we have a couple guys that just like do the venture. So we like run the gamut a bit, but I tend to focus like purely just on like the liquid side of things.
I mean, this is the first time I've ever met you. I've heard about you ever since I got into professional crypto trading. You and Bobby Cho, you have a reputation for having started a spray and pray fund at basically the best possible time, and then have basically rode that massive 2021 wave and somehow didn't get blown out by the sell-off, probably just by actively trading, risk management, using some of the techniques you just mentioned. I
We
guess
got lucky too. I want to be really completely frank there. Like I mean, like the history is always told by the survivors, but like we zigged and zagged in a couple of the right spots in 2022, which like very much helped.
tell us some stories like that. You guys threaded the fucking needle. That was almost nobody managed to do that. All you were in that sort of top 5, top 3 fund category in 21, and literally everybody in the top 20, I think, except you, got immolated spectacularly. Like, what were you doing? Tell us some stories.
Yeah, so we got a little lucky first off because the way we're structured, we like have like a pretty gross like tax burden because like it's all pass through income and we all like live in places that are like very high tax regime, and most of our stuff is short term cap gains. So like we basically have to sell half our P&L in any given year just to like cover the tax bill in a good year, right? And like that changes depending on like the breakdown, but that's like sort of the rough math. 21 was such a like phenomenal sort of run that we started prepping for the 2022 tax hit, because like we would make estimated payments but not like huge, and like you don't know what your P&L is going to be, so like it's pretty much all going out Q1 22. So we started like basically de-risking and taking a bunch of money off the table at the end of 21 just because we had to, right? Like because we're going to have to pay that money, which we did end. So that was lucky really, because we just like knew. I had seen enough people get obliterated in 2018 from like not having their tax money together in 2017 to know that like, look, if Q1 is bad in the following like a good year, like you have like a real problem because you're fire selling assets, like maybe at sort of the level that like you can just like make your tax but nut. So anyway, that was like the first lucky thing that we had. So we just like had the cash on hand, and we had sold the money for bonuses too, just to get that ahead. So we could make our payments that we needed to make like in the Q1. So like that was all right. And then like that didn't force us to do like a ton of stuff in the beginning. We also just like we had taken some risk off the table from some like larger positions via using the borrow lend desks. That was just like lucky that we structured them as term so that they didn't get called in open. So like we just were kind of lucky in some of like the structuring that we had with some of this stuff, that we were like able to, like we didn't do well. Like we took a lot of deltas down and like a lot of our book just got smushed, but we had taken enough risk off the table that we had bullets on the way down, and we were also able to just like keep paying and operating everything. Like there was no disruption of payroll. Like we let a couple people go that, I mean, look, you get aggressive like hiring in the bull and like you got to like clean it up in the bear. But for the most part, like we kept the majority of the team through. I will say the one thing like I didn't anticipate, which I learned, was that like we were very active with most of the bilateral lending desks. So Celsius, Grayscale, BlockFi, like we've done an equity investment in BlockFi even. Like we were big players with all these guys. I didn't really think about it, which I should have, is that like if one lender dies, like they all die. I didn't like, I knew it was very daisy chained, and I knew there was really like only like 10 people maybe that were like 90% of the borrow. But I guess I just didn't factor in how bad that would be unwinding. So like part of the problem we ran into in 2022 was like a lender would blow up. We would have to like close all of our open term loans with them. But by the time we were done with that, like the next peg was falling and like that was getting called in. So like we were just constantly paying back borrow and like having to close things. So like that sucked. And like in retrospect, like that was like the biggest thing that we could have thought a little bit more about that we just didn't at the time. I mean, like in the bull market, like you get sloppy and lazy and you don't like think about like if it goes bad. But that was like a real headache that was going on behind the scenes that I don't think people really understood was that everything was like at some you had like a 4 month window where like every dollar of like open term borrow got called. And like it was hard. Like it was hard for people to like get all that together. And a lot of that money had been like fired out into like venture. And like people just kind of like assumed they'd always be able to borrow it from somewhere. And you just couldn't. Like the market went to zero. Like the credit like crunch that happened was wild. Like it just went to nothing overnight. And by overnight I mean like 3 or 4 months, but like it just happened and it never came back. It still really hasn't come back. So that was like a big bogey that we didn't really think about on the way down.
Yeah, the thing you said at the beginning, I think, is actually a huge source of alpha. You said, I mean, a lot of people are in that position where when they make a ton of money in a given year, they have to cover their taxes, which I think is why you see crypto so often top in January and February as people are paying out their taxes. Everybody, sort of calls that a meme, but after the cycles, I mean, that's just what we see. I know that in 2021 you had,
I mean, that money's got to go, right?
But like it's got to go. Like it's got to exit, and people have to buy their sports cars or whatever their chalets or whatever the hell you want to spend your money on.
Looks like Dan's rocking a Peloton back there, or
oh yeah,
dude,
it's probably is that where the money went? The Peloton
exercycle.
Yeah, and then actually I have a dinosaur in a crate.
Wait, is it that like a real, like a bones, or like what are we talking about?
Oh yeah, it's a fossil. It's like a fish. Yeah.
Oh wow. See, we were debating before the show. We were like, Dan's a real OG. Like, does he have a tungsten cube? Does he have a Lambo? But you have a fucking dinosaur fossil.
I know.
That's pretty dope.
I have a big tusk in the base. The guys are downstairs on that, like where in the main floor, like we have like everybody like in a ring. This is like we took an old townhouse and we like turned it into like an office. So like I'm in the upstairs room. But so this remember you remember this? We went to like go buy that dinosaur in France.
No, I do not remember this at all.
This is the peak of 2021. This was like November. Like you could mark the calendar high to like the like with a pen to like the exact top we sent. So there anyway, like not to get too in the weeds, a bunch of people got together like and we sort of organized it to try to buy this dinosaur. But we ended up getting smoked on it. It ended up going like way higher than we thought it was. But we sent a guy to France and like we had to pay a deposit in euro to like be able to bid, right? So like we had to send like I forget what it was. It was like a couple €100,000 to like be able to like actually participate. Like that was how you could prove you're real. And then the guy we sent, Jack was our CFO, to do it, was there and he gets like smoked, right? Like the auction goes way higher than we thought it was going to go. Like we don't have to stand a chance. But at the time I was like, look, like you're there. Like I don't even want to like figure out how to get this money back. Just burn the deposit because like they have other stuff they're selling. So he got like a bunch of like random fossils that we like have. But this thing is like 10 feet long, which we didn't realize, and it's like 800 pounds. So like we have nowhere to put it. We were like, oh, we'll put it on the wall, and it's so fucking it's rock. Like it's a big rock. Like it's in the rock still. It's way too. So it's just been sitting in the crates here for like a year.
And this is what is it? This is like a fish. You said what?
It's a 10-foot like prehistoric fish.
That's incredible. We gotta get a picture of this thing once you actually put it together.
To be fair, I haven't opened it, so like I don't even know if it's in there, but like it should be. Yeah, I don't have anywhere. I don't have a single piece of like wall that's like will hold it, or even like I don't know if I could even like structurally hold it. So anyway, that's like sitting in the case.
And this is why crypto sells off. Crypto sells off because people take their money to buy prehistoric fish and sell and pay taxes. And so I think maybe we can build an index for this. Yeah, and credit crises. I mean, we should be able to build in it. I mean, I see this happen over and over in crypto. When you have just like a complete amount of froth in the market and people are just doing absurd things with their money that they never thought that they would do otherwise, that's always such a good signal.
Well, Dan's on cycle number 4 now, so I think by then he's earned the license to buy some prehistoric dinosaur fish.
I mean, I guess Dan's a fossil himself in the
Yeah.
crypto industry, so might as well have some fossils.
Well, do you think we're in froth mode right now, Dan, or do you think that this thing is just going to send after the ETF launches?
This one's hard because I'm gonna say this. I don't have a great insight of what's gonna happen like the next couple weeks. Look, I'll say this: if they reject it, it's going down. But like assuming that like it's going through, right? And like everything that seems to be the consensus. Like people smarter than me in that world like think that. I think it's gonna be kind of noisy for a bit. Like like just because this thing exists doesn't mean like people are gonna be like immediately like, oh, now I can like find it. But like TradFi moves at like a speed that's a little bit slower. So I do think like even if people want to put that position on, like it's not just like, oh, day one, boom, get me. There'll be some of that, and like that will matter. And like retail is like a force, so like they can like come in like rip this thing. But I think you're gonna need a couple weeks to a month till you like get a good idea of what like baseline flows are gonna be. But like the back of that is like there's gonna be sustained inflow and it's gonna matter and it's gonna be good and it's gonna be like net like sort of like cash sort of like moving into the industry as a whole. So I think it's going to be a big tailwind. And you also have a halving, which matters. So I think both those things are going to be like, I think it's going to get wilder the end of the year, but like in the next couple weeks, like, I don't know. I don't have a bet. Like, I don't really like have like, if anything, like we'll probably just like, if it gets like smushed, like we'll try to grab some, but like, I don't have like a good plan other than that. So that's like kind of it. Just, it's like way out of my wheelhouse of how this stuff's going to move. I don't have like real conversations with people that would be like putting money in this thing. I just like I'm guessing.
But do you think so? I mean, one thing that the market was talking about a ton is just right after the fake tweet from Mr. Gary, ETH BTC just ripped. It ripped super hard, and it seems like people are just very underpositioned for that in general. Are you thinking of getting long ETH after the ETF, or what do you think in terms of rotation plays
Yeah,
here?
I think there should be some like reversion there, right? Like ETH Bitcoin's just gotten so shellacked. So like I think it's a pretty easy one to be. Also, do you remember when the CME futures launched and then like the next month like ETH Bitcoin like tripled? It like that was like the bottom to the second. So I think a little people are looking at it like sort of the same way. I think that's probably like if you put a gun to my head, like ETH Bitcoin trades higher like on the back of this thing and just like sort of like drifts up. That'd be my guess.
Why do you think ETH is so cursed?
I think it's the easiest, most liquid thing that you've been able to sell against Bitcoin for a while. So like people that like want to get longer it have probably done so. I think that's like just like the simple on it. Like it's harder to sell like the other basket of vaults, and you also would have gotten carried out in it. Just like a stuff like bounce. I just think like if you were like I want to get like longer Bitcoin, like selling ETH against it was probably like the trade for the last 6 months.
I think we're seeing that market dynamic shift a bit. I mean, if you remember back in the last 3-4 months, every time ETH BTC would rip, the entire alt complex would sell off because it was super clear that everyone was long the alts against short ETH. And this is actually the first time that I'm seeing, look, ETH BTC is up 2.5%, and alts are actually doing okay relative. And so I think it seems like people are starting to work out of that position, and that should in theory be helpful for ETH BTC. So like load up on your Lidos, your ARBs, your optimisms of the world, and just sort of close your eyes and wait. But I don't know. The tough part is that if this is quote unquote priced in and BTC tops out, I mean, how long do we get a rally, right? I think that's sort of the tough part.
yeah, I don't know. I'd probably guess it's like a couple months. I don't know. I don't think it's gonna be like the whole year unless there's like some like real change, like unless like activity on ETH just like goes through a roof and like your burn just gets so high and the thing just starts to feed on itself.
Is that something that you actively trade? So are you putting on these positions to try to capture these moves?
I mean, we'll trade like ETH out, right? We don't trade the like spreads of like stuff like Sol ETH or like AVAX Sol or like we just don't do a lot of like the pair trading. Like I've said this a bunch. Like I wish there was like a real index product for like the top 50 that was, I don't know how you'd like do the weighting so it wasn't just like Bitcoin, but like that you could use as just like a generic like hedge of like exposure. But like absent that, like I mean, sometimes we'll go long alts and we'll like sell Bitcoin and ETH against it, sort of like, but basically it's probably 50-50 is like most of the times, like, or whatever we got like lying around that doesn't have like great yield. But for the most part, like we're not like sort of taking exotic pair trade bets. So like as ETH Bitcoin is like across itself, like we don't really trade. Yeah, what's up?
You mentioned earlier that just the combination of the tailwind from ETF inflows plus the halving is just absolutely massive, and you're expecting a bullish second half of the year or Q4. Like, so am I. I'm so ludicrously bullish that I can't see straight. And what I can't figure out against that backdrop is that if you have this steadily rallying, benchmark asset, what are you supposed to rotate into for the beta plays? Like, I'm so bad at this, and you guys with more experience than me, who are more plugged into the market than I am, Dan, I want to ask you, like, what sectors are you looking to play for, the bull market that you see coming? What are you rotating risk into, or are you just waiting for now and you're going to try to get into that higher beta stuff later?
Yeah, so like I mean, the way we generally try to play this stuff is like it used to be just like you own Bitcoin and ETH when they rip and then flatline, then you spray out sort of into like the most liquid sort of alts. I mean, that's mostly the other L1s. Like that's kind of been, or now like the L2s, you definitely put in that bucket. So like I don't know, call it the top 5 other L1s and like ARB and OP and I don't know, pick a couple others if you want. But like basically stuff that's pretty liquid, but like is definitely like higher beta. The thing was like this time like ETH just didn't do that, right? Like really just like Bitcoin just like ripped up, would flatline, and then the rest of the alts would rally. But that's generally how we look at it, is like you see the cash move in and like real money come through in the majors, which has just been Bitcoin ETH, and then you wait to the stuff that's going to spread. Like the longer tail of stuff will rip too, but like there's capacity issues. Like once you start getting outside the other L1s, like and depending on like how far you like want to go out.
Also, weirdly, like the inflows that are about to come in are going to come in on TradFi rails, and you can't like take your BlackRock Bitcoin ETF and diversify it into bonk, right? Like there's no mechanism to do that. So maybe Bitcoin will just outperform everything else this cycle. I don't know how to think about it.
Yeah, but if you think about it, like that Bitcoin's getting bought on a cash exchange somewhere from a crypto native person who's now getting cash, right? And then they're going to take those bullets and do something with them. I think that's like the way I generally try to think of like how it moves through the system.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, at least some percentage of the Bitcoin that's getting bought will indeed go rotate into something else. That's a good way of thinking about it. I was kind of assuming that in the past, when there were big Bitcoin inflows, they were going on to, just random exchanges, and then eventually the holders of those Bitcoins get bored and rotated out the risk curve. But no, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, I mean, what is actually going to be super useful is the ETF becomes like a marginable asset inside like brokerages, as opposed to GBTC, which is a little like I think there's only a couple of people that are like lend against it. So like that's actually super useful for people that can like actually use their Bitcoin as like a lending product again, right? Like you can borrow against that pretty easily.
Yeah, it becomes a much more useful asset. Just like overnight, Bitcoin becomes becomes so much better to buy because you're not tying up capital that you can't do anything else with. So I mean that could actually lead to another it could lead to just another credit boom cycle.
Like Schwab or Fidelity will give grandma leverage to buy the BlackRock Bitcoin ETF too. So you don't need to try too hard to imagine some scenarios where people get pretty levered long.
Or you could just like you could have 100 Bitcoin worth of shares of the ETF, and now you can like use that to get a margin loan to buy like a house. Like you could think it's so useful having that thing, like not like as Grayscale's version of it.
Yeah, Grayscale's version absolutely carted out some of your competitors.
I can't believe the wrecking ball that thing caused. I mean, we got hurt with it too, right? Like when that bar was getting called in, like we had like some of that spread on, and it like just torched us. Like there was nothing you could do about it too. Like that's what I was saying. Like that stuff like that, like there wasn't a ton you could do to avoid it. Because the thought was always like, all right, like if BlockFi falls down, I'll just go like borrow it from Celsius or I'll go borrow it from Genesis. The problem was like everybody was dead, so you're like, fuck, like there's nothing, like there's nobody to go to anymore, like unless you could go find something bilateral, but then nobody wanted to face anybody anyway, so it didn't matter. I don't know.
After that, like after hearing that, how do you keep your head in the game? I mean, this is something that I work on a ton with myself, and I don't really have a great answer, but this market just sometimes just takes you out and just slaps you around, and just being able to keep your head in the game. I mean, so many people they make a few $1 million, they check out. It's like, how do you keep your head in the game? You're like, all right, I'm going to get back on. I'm going to keep attacking this. Bull market's around the corner. Like let me stay on top of it. I mean, do you take vacations?
I got nothing else to do, so that helps. No, I mean, yeah, I mean, I say this a lot. I say definitely to like guys who are younger is like, there's gonna be periods where it's like terrible. Just like take that time and do something like else. Like, because there is 100% in the bull market. You just start letting other aspects of your life like fall to shit, right? Like you like don't keep up with friends, like you're like not talking to your family, like your health is like use the down periods where like there's nothing going on and like the chart's terrible, like everything's just getting carted and like you have a position and you just like don't like use that time and be like get your life in order because like you're not gonna get it when it turns, so you have to like be really good about your time management. I think like that's something you like take a couple cycles to like figure out. Is like when it's slow and bad and like all of 22 you could basically like have gone away and like fucked off and it wouldn't have mattered. Like you would have come back and everything was the same price it was when you were there and you didn't miss a damn thing. So use that sort of period when you can. And if you have the resources, obviously, to like get the other aspects of your life like squared away. That's like I think a big takeaway that I've like gotten over time. Otherwise though, but you gotta remember like when it's the worst, it's when everybody's getting blown out. Like that's when the opportunity is, and just chill. Like you don't have to do anything. Well, this is also like why we don't use a lot of leverage. Like even though we were really active with the borrow, and like we do, I say that like we try to avoid leverage, but like we obviously have used it. We try to do it more like not just like outright loan, but you got to like leverage causes like an issue of like time. So like you suddenly have to like have things happen in a like or at least like it adds a clock aspect to it. If you could just like not do anything, like it's great. Then just like don't fret, just like chill. I don't know. People get overworked. I think it's because like the industry is moving so fast. Everyone feels they need to be doing something at a given time.
Do you still believe in the industry as much as you did on day one? Like, you mentioned earlier in the podcast that you were, back in the day in 2013, it was real crazies, real believers. Like, are you still a real believer? And if so, like, what do you see this transforming in general? I want to hear your philosophy.
I still buy the idea that like stateless sort of like money is like a very big important thing, and I think like the ability to just like send value to whoever you want is like super useful. I think also stable coins are like a massive just like leap, and I think they're a huge tool. That being said, like I think the industry is getting it's become more of a casino as like time has gone on. Not that it wasn't in the past; it was just a smaller aspect of the flows. I think it's like just dominates now, and like people don't even try to hide it. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I just like think it is what it is.
I agree. Like, I mean, casinos in real life kind of suck. But I mean, look at Bonk. Your odds are way better than 00, right? And it's probably more fun, and you get to tweet about it.
Yeah, and you get to be part. You get to be part of a community, which I think is missing.
Yeah, people want to be part of the community. I like I said, like I don't feel strongly either way about it. I just like it has definitely become a bigger portion of like the ecosystem, like as and basically every year since 2017. Once ICO started, it kind of like just never came back.
Do you think to the serious people out there building on crypto, do you think there's anything that's valuable that's going to get built that we're not paying attention to, be it games or real world assets or DPIN or any of the shit that people are talking about these days? Are you focused on any of
I don't
that?
know. I tend to like not give it a ton of thought until it's too late, and that's fine because like most of the time it's just been a fade. I was even like skeptical of stablecoins for a really long time. Like when Tether came out, I was like, "This is stupid." I was like, "Why wouldn't you just use dollars?" And then like as time went on, I was like, "Oh, like this is why." So like I don't know. I'm probably just like irrationally pessimistic about like things initially, but like you got to remember, there's been so many cycles of this stuff, right? Like it was STOs, and then it was like remittances, and then it would like every like 2 years there's like a new thing that like I don't know. So those have generally just been a fade.
Yeah, I honestly I like that. Like I like that approach because I think that that's how you see the market with clear eyes is when you recognize that there are tailwinds to this of useful things that are probably going to work, but at the end of the day we're traders and we're just here to make money and we're here to focus on that, and that we just know that this is the most inefficient market we've seen in our lifetime, and let's just figure out how to take advantage of that in the biggest way possible. I mean, I actually think that if you focus too much on the fundamentals, you just get lost in the weeds on it. And so it's just about, okay, well, what are the good trades? How do we make money? And so, I mean, it's I know it sounds kind of silly to be like, all right, we'll throw out the fundamentals, but it's true. I've just seen so many people in crypto get sidetracked by that.
And maybe I'm just not smart enough to like be in the weeds, like thinking about like the ramifications of all this stuff. So I like, here's the example, like real world assets. Like I cannot square in my head how that's gonna work in crypto, but like maybe I'm wrong and like people just figure it out. But like in my mind, I'm like I don't understand like how these two are gonna jive.
Would you buy it on a narrative like, oh, real world assets seem to be gaining traction amongst the community of short term investors? I would like to get ahead of that before it migrates from Telegram to Twitter, and then I'll pitch it back out when the thing goes parabolic. Like, do those short term types of meme or narrative trades, or not really?
It's more like we'll be like, all right, this real world asset thing's flying. 3 names have like tripled. Like, what are the other names that haven't? And like, why should we own those? And like, not give like that would be more like what we do then. Like,
Smart.
like we're just like not early enough to like be like catching the whole thing. Like, we're just like reactive.
But you did do a ton of VC in like, I guess it was 18, 19, and 20 during the doldrums of that bear market, right? And then you 1000x'd a bunch of shit.
Yeah, I think like a lot of that logic was just like tokens have become very out of vogue. Like there was like a period in like 2019, 2020 where like it had been like tokens are worthless, like equity is the thing, like this was all like a joke. And we were like, I don't know, like I think people still like tokens. Like I think they're gonna like so we were just kind of like doing it. Also, we got like we did like very well out of the gate and we were just like financing everything we were getting a look at for a period because like we just had so much money coming in from the trading side that like we just like kept cutting sort of checks. So like that was like also just like it was just like luck that we were like it was all happening sort of at the same time. So like that was also like part of the thesis was just like we have like a lot of excess capacity. Like we're new. We haven't done a lot in venture anyway. Like let's just see where this stuff like goes. And then we just like sort of had caught like a period where there had been massive underinvestment on the token side of things.
I honestly think we're sort of in that period right now. I wonder how you're thinking about venture right now, but it seems like prices haven't necessarily caught up with what tokens are actually doing. Right now, I'm still seeing deals, for 15, 20, 20, 25 mil of things that probably can come out at 50 to 100 if the market stays hot. So like, I actually think that seems like it's a good time to start the spray and pray again from my perspective.
I'll tell you what's something that's been interesting, and like I was like didn't like even really understand that. I didn't understand it was just like how much of the building of like other primitives on Bitcoin is, and how hot that is in Asia. Like just a whole market that's like big and like relatively cheap on like the venture side that like we're just like ignoring sort of here. That's just like everything they're talking about, and you saw this happen, right? A couple of these tokens like roofed and like went to $1 billion valuations and like nobody had even heard of them here.
Is it this is really all coming out of Asia?
That's as far as I see it. I mean, like one of our guys was over in Hong Kong for a month, and he was like, "This is the only thing people are talking about over here is like ordinals and stuff like that, and like building DeFi on Bitcoin." He's like, "But nobody talks about it here."
That's kind of interesting. I mean, should be very good for Bitcoin miners. That's for sure. Let's get the fees up.
As a business I perennially hate, like it should be very good for them.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. It's like it's such a terrible business because you know that your income's basically going to zero over time, but at the same time, these things 10x in the last bull cycle. So
I've just seen so I've like of all of the like bad investment I've ever seen like in this industry over my time, like 90% of it was like miners. Like it's just like always, like every time, terrible outcomes for everybody. Except for like the handful in Asia that you don't have access to that like
mhm.
crush it.
Marathon's done okay.
Yeah, I think that you're right though. That has like changed a lot now that a lot of them are like public, but like that's just scarred into my brain. So like I think I can't shake it.
Well, speaking of that, what's the worst investment you've ever made in crypto?
I mean, we had a lot of rugs. So like there's a lot of
Yeah,
just zeros. Like there's a lot of just like
yeah.
smoldering like craters in like the book. Like so like those are probably some. Look, I think the biggest ones that I like fucked up were when I was at Circle, we were trading OTC and we had just started trading ETH OTC and it was the second asset we had gotten. And we had a New York tech fund that was coming in buying 100,000 lots of ETH like units every day. And I remember just like thinking about it being like, these guys don't know what they're doing. These guys are clowns. Like instead of just like looking being like, oh, like this is like a thing and like people are like throwing real money into it. At the time it wasn't a ton. And like basically just like not getting balls long ETH then was like a huge mistake, especially because I was seeing it. Like I was like watching the flows and like I was impacting the market and I was just like fading myself. And I was like, I don't know. Looking back on it, I was like, that was like the easiest layup that I just didn't take.
Yeah. I mean, this market, it'll teach you a lot of lessons. That's for sure. There are always going to be things that you sold out before the 1000x, or that you held for too long and then you just get like rugged on completely, like Luna. That's, I mean, that's just part of the addictive part of it.
We did that round that they did in like January and like the money was gone in like February.
Oh, really?
Like oh yeah, that was a huge one that we just like got obliterated on. Yeah, we like punched that ticket and then it was like dead.
Remember when Do Kwon and some trading company executives who shall go unnamed went around and tried to raise money at the last minute from everybody in the market to try and prop up the price of Luna? That was the craziest pitch I have ever heard in the history of my business endeavors. That was insane. I couldn't even believe it. They're like, yeah, we want to raise $1 billion. Well, how do you know $1 billion is the right amount? And Do Kwon's like, yeah, well, we looked at all the exchanges and that's how much is on the offer and the stack, and we just want to take it out. I remember saying like, well, what if there's more in the stack, like an iceberg, extra volume that's there that you can't see? He's like, oh, well, we just think that the news from the raise will, scare off the offers. So we just like give us $100 million. And I just remember thinking through this. I was like, is this a real industry? Like, I mean,
No, it's like you said, not a serious industry. Not. No, I remember that pitch super well. So we called it. It's like, I remember asking him, was like, "Hey, I'm on the phone with Doe. Hey, how big is the hole? Well, it's 2 to 3 billion, and you want to raise $1 billion to cover a $2 to $3 billion hole."
yeah, we just take out the offers, take out the offers, then it'll scare the market higher. Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah. Anyway, I'm sure you've seen a bunch of those, Dan. What's the worst pitch you've ever seen in crypto?
Oh god, I mean, some of the original pitches in the ICO boom were just like they were existing like venture-backed companies that were just like, we're gonna do a token, and that was it. Like they'd take their existing pitch deck that they had just used for whatever their like Series B was or whatever, and then like at the end they would just be like, and we're gonna launch a token. There was a ton of those. This went on for like months when like the ICO boom was going, and people were like, this is just free money. I'm gonna like launch a token. So we saw at least a dozen of those where I was like, there's nothing here besides like your existing equity pitch, and then like now it has a token and you can only invest in the token. So there was some funny ones. There was like, I mean, there's like other ones. There was like, what was the one? It was for like chefs. I think it was like called like Ambrosia or something like that. I remember that one being like, this is the 2017 ICO pitches were the best. Those were like the most half baked by far.
I know, it was just nice because they were also, it was just so clear what was happening, that you understood that you were basically investing into this thing that just had absolutely nothing behind it. Whereas as we've progressed, things have been dressed up a little bit. People, put little flares on it. Oh, no, we're actually solving this issue. And I'm like, guys, just tell me how the token's going up. That's what really matters at the end of the day. It's funny.
Oh man, yeah. God, that was a special time in crypto. I still stand by 2017 was the wildest period I've ever traded through. I like 2021 was a mania, but like doesn't hold a candle to 2017.
I mean, it was just so much fun, honestly, back then. Also, I was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, so maybe I have just a little bit of nostalgia for those days. I mean, by the time 2021 came around, it was definitely a little bit more jaded. But in 2017, I was sitting there spamming my ETH to get into these ICOs, hoping that I'd paid enough gas to fucking get in. You remember those?
What is it like? Was it the SNT ICO where like ETH just stopped working for like 2 days?
Yeah,
it was just like I was like how is this like? I was like, how is this okay? Like everybody's just like accepting this. Yeah,
it's a future of finance, baby.
Yeah, I remember the BCH fork happening, and there was like a very sharp guy that we had on the desk who was like convinced that like, oh, like the fork value will come out and like Bitcoin will go down by whatever it is, and like instead they both just like rallied after, and like Bitcoin price never even went down. And he's like, I don't understand. People aren't like pricing the fork. I was like, dude, it doesn't fucking matter. Like nobody cares. I was like, they're just gonna buy both now.
Yeah, at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is how many eyeballs are on an asset. And so if there's a fork happening, more people are looking at it, I guess it's going up. No, it's just funny how that works.
We made a fortune on that trade because OKX was still crediting you the fork, even though, so the way, because they have coin margin futures, like they still do, but like that was the dominant one they had then. And that was like really the most liquid future because BitMEX wasn't as hot as it was. So we were massively short the back of the curve, and you post spot as collateral, but they credit you the fork, right? So you get the fork for free and the curve collapsed like into sort of the event. And we made a fortune on this trade because we just like kept putting more and more of it on, and like just the market just like didn't care. And I remember like talking to Jeremy and Sean at Circle about it, and they were like explaining it, and they kept like trying to find like the loophole, and I was like, no, like the only loophole here is like OKX like just take our money, but like they always have that risk. So like really we're always wearing the same risk we have. Anyway, I was like, this is free. I was like, it's free money. Just people just like choose not to like want it.
Interesting. The only free money I've ever been given in crypto is when the ETH work versus ETH fork happened, and FTX undercredited us ETH work versus our ETH, so we complained over the customer service channel, and then SBF replied with, "Oh, sorry guys, just take some more ETH work," and like just magically airdropped us.
Looking back on it, it didn't matter, right? Like, it's like why not? It's like give them free shit. Nothing's all fake anyway.
Yeah, have some fun.
Yeah, our DevOps guys did a cool trade with that one where they because like so like I forget how exactly they did it, but they because like all the assets like became worthless on the ETH proof of work, like right, like because you didn't have to like deliver them, like all the pools got super imbalanced like immediately, and you had like a couple blocks to do it. But our guy who runs DevOps was able to have like an ETH node running the first day, like on the first block, and they were like he was able to like drain all of it and like take like he got like a ton of free ETH proof of work on the other side. It was like a really complicated trade that he like put off, but like it ended up making like a ton of money, and I was like, this is just the dumbest sort of reason, but like why not?
That's a sick trade. We ran something similar but way less sophisticated, which is that we actually came in after the chain, and we started, everything was priced ridiculously low, and we thought there was a reasonable chance that some of these things could turn into meme coins. So we just like bought all of the meme coins that were on ETH that were priced at effectively zero for like the USDC that we had on there. It didn't end up working. I think maybe at some point during the bull market it might actually work.
You still got them.
If I still have them, but I basically like own a bunch of these meme coins on ETH that I bought for literally like $5, and I own 10% of the supply. Just like maybe one day
you gotta lobby OKX to start listing them, and that's how you get it.
Dan, I'm late for a date with my wife. I gotta jump, but you guys keep going.
Yeah, do what you gotta do. I got a jet too, actually. Yeah.
Okay. So it's been really well, dude, this was an awesome conversation. Ton of content, super packed. Thanks for coming on. You got to come on again once you get the fish put together.
Yeah, seriously.
This fish is never getting put together. This is gonna sit in the box forever.
We'll raise a DAO. We'll raise a DAO for a TaskRabbit to put it together.
It's fucking heavy. We had to carry it up here. All right. For the next one, I'll say, but it wouldn't fit here. It's too big.
That's so funny.
Maybe you should make a Game of Thrones style boss chair for yourself, made out of ancient dinosaur whale bones. Yeah,
that'd be pretty sick. Yeah,
like have the intern do that. There's a CMS intern on Twitter. Just hit him up and get that thing assembled.
Be like, listen, you're hired. You just gotta make me a chair. All right, dude.
Great to meet you, Dan. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.